Hello, hello. Okay, so hi all, welcome to the live show. Um, uh, 30 people is really cool, and yeah, sharing of some important thoughts here that I think we should realize at this point in time. Are you getting tired of sitting at home? Because I am. And of course, I always sit at home, actually, but being forced to sit at home, that's the problem. My rebellious spirit can't stand it. But I think it's so hard to fight these kind of mass hysteria and panics and yeah I think that um, it's very important to go back in history to understand what's happening today. Things I've discovered that shocked me through and through, that really changed my worldview. And I think it's super important to understand this because if you don't, you get fooled over and over again by um, the politicians, the news, um, and it's not a profitable practice, and it's very sad that the world functions like this. So it's controversial topics that I will discuss, and most people think when you say things like that you're crazy and a fool and a conspiracy theorists and all that. But there is clear evidence for these claims. So 9/11. So what happened there was that planes flew into the twin towers, and then they collapsed a little later, and killing 5,000 people, and and after that there was a war on terrorism. And for 10 years, even up until recently, there was a war on terrorism going on all over the world, where mainly the US, with its allies, European forces mainly, would be bombing, well, terrorists, they call that. Huh? Um, but and it started with two big wars in Iraq and in Afghanistan, where they invaded the country and took it over. Um, but later it was I discovered that it doesn't add up the story. Um, like it's not possible that a steel building collapses like that, like a mushroom explosion. Like it collapsed like outwards, like a cloud of. It looked like almost an atomic explosion the way the twin towers collapsed down. Huh? And the theory was that it is that it was pancaked. So the top floors, the floor that got hit got a fire and weakened, and then the floors above it, due to their weight, pushed down, and then they kept on falling through the whole building down to 100 floors down, wiping the whole building away. But it's not, it's just physically impossible. Like when you can build such a tower on your own, a metal tower, and create a fire in the middle and see what's gonna happen if the structure weakens. Well, if you heat it up very warm, you might succeed in heating up the steel so hot that indeed the weight, it becomes weak, and the top floors, due to their weight, fall down. And what's gonna happen? Well, it will, like, the top floor will slide off. It won't fall through the whole building down. It will just, like, maybe topple over to the side and fall off, and you will still have, like, your building standing there, half of it, and the other half will lay on the floor, visibly recognizable as being the top of the building. Huh? And it didn't happen at all. It's clear that what happened there was a controlled demolition, and not just like one. What they did was explode every floor after one another, causing an explosion, outwards explosion that changed concrete into dust, and that was all the dust that you saw there, like a cloud of dust all over New York City, was only possible via controlled demolition, where you really vaporize all the concrete into very small particles. You can't do that with the collapse of a building. You need to really explode it, and explode a lot of it. Huh? And so that's what happened there. And the evidence is even more clear when you look at building number 7. That's the third biggest building that fell that day after the Twin Towers collapsed. Yeah, the third tower that was 50 stories high, also suddenly collapsed, and it wasn't even hit by a plane. And the story was that it was due to fires, office fires caused by the other towers collapsing, that weakened the building, and suddenly it came down. And it's so clear if you just look at the video that that's only possible with a controlled demolition, that suddenly the whole building at the same time falls down. It's not possible with a fire. So it's overly clear for anybody who just opens their eyes that it doesn't add up, the story of the government, what happened that day. And if you dig much deeper into it, you will discover so many things that really show strong evidence that it was an inside job done likely by the deep state of the United States, so that's the CIA and some other agencies, but also in cooperation likely with Israel, the deep state of Israel. And that was for me a total shock. Like, I couldn't believe that a government would attack its own people, like kill its own people just for political gain, for money, because who were the beneficiaries of that? Well, it was the political class, the top, Bush, Cheney, and all their friends, and all those war companies that got billions of money to start a war. But it was also a massive theft of just government money, because the day before the attack, the guy from Pentagon said that, yeah, I'm sorry, but there is like over a trillion lost here in the bookkeeping of the Pentagon. We don't know where the money is. And a day later, you get this attack on the United States, which causes nobody to ever look deeper into this. But so the benefit here, like, why do these people do that? Well, because there's so much money to make, like trillions of dollars they made that day, that was distributed to all their friends, like a whole top political class, and trillions of dollars is a lot of money. And where did that come from? Mainly from the printing press, just issuing more US dollars, and by the Fed, and the Fed buys the government bonds with that, and the government spends it, and on all kind of stuff, such as giving it to the Pentagon, where it suddenly disappears, or paying war companies to produce lots of equipment. But it's basically a big looting scheme. It's really a big heist, what happened that day. Like a bank robbery is nothing against this. This is the biggest kind of theft we have in the world. And let's imagine that there is no fiat system, but only statism. Well, they would not be able to steal so much, so it would not be so profitable. They could raise taxes, to say like, oh, we have to go to war now, let's raise the taxes and you're gonna all have to pay more. And that will so likely happen in a world where you have statism without fiat currency. They would just raise the taxes, but that's of course a much harder sell. So that's one example, but the main issue here is the statism, because actually it's people, really people, the way people function and think, is that, and Roger Verges did an interview, I made that a great point, like people know during the good times that the government sucks, and actually in Africa they know this much better, that the government sucks than in Europe, for example, where they many more people glorify the government and a socialist system around it that pays them. You have that much less in Africa, where they all don't, not many people get payments from the government, but they can all see that the top political class, they live the good life. They fill their pockets all the time. In Europe, there is more this more people get paid by the government, so you get more support, but it also makes that the producing class flees because they get taxed more, and not only via big taxes, but also lots of also the inflation tax, and so what you see is that productivity and growth goes down. You see that clearly in Europe, um, and so. But the problem with this statism is that, yes, we all know, or most people know, the government sucks. Don't let them run, for example, a telecom company, because it will be a shitty company, it will be expensive, and it will not be a great service. Or don't let them run a car company, or a lottery, even though they still have the monopoly on lotteries in every country. But the lottery, well, it sucks because, well, the chances to win money there is much lower than to lose your money. um, uh, but but when there is a crisis like this, for example, a virus epidemic, then suddenly people all look at the government like, help us, save us, you can do it, you can save us, and only you. But that's not the case, because the government is equally incompetent during crisis than during good times. The measures they take is very centralized, top down, and is with very little information. Like, they don't know, for example, which hospitals need this or that. There are thousands of hospitals in the country. How would they know? How could they organize anything that is efficient and fast? No, it's the free market that if you allow the free market to function, then during good times it gives the best results, like the best services or the best products for the cheapest price. But during crisis especially, it's the free market of allowing prices to fluctuate freely that will cause the goods to go to the people that really need it. And for example, today you see in a crisis that many people don't understand these simple concepts. They all look at the state to save them and to take all kind of, we call it draconian, but it's actually fascist actions to basically take over, shut down free enterprise companies, force them to produce other things, limit the movement of people, and even set prices for vital goods, like for example masks. It's a very simple concept. When there's a crisis coming and you see it beforehand and you think something will be in high need, yeah, you buy up the supplies and you sell it for a lot more money. That's how you make profit, but that's actually also how you make sure that actually only the people that really need it will buy it. For example, with this mask or these hand sanitizers, people that buy up the supplies to then sell it for a nice profit and actually improve the world, and not only themselves but the world, they get stolen from by the government in full support of most people, even jailed, and are called price gougers, or all kind of names they are called, of being bad people. It shows that most people really don't understand economics, and don't understand that actually it's not in their benefit to start stealing from other people, out of jealousy, or a lack of vision, or not wanting to pay a higher price during crisis for a certain goods. These are not the right motivations to start stealing and robbing people. Yet it is fully supported by most people today, and it causes for a lot of market inefficiencies. Like the end result is that even hospital workers that are at high risk to catch the virus can't even get a mask, because, well, people are not allowed to sell them for a high price. And so they can't even get a mask because they have to wait of the government to ship it to them, which never gonna happen in time. Huh? So statism is a kind of belief system in the government and in the initiation of violence by the government, uh, things that they would actually not dare to do themselves. Like, people understand when it comes to person relationships, like, okay, the guy bought all the masks or bought all the hand sanitizer, and he asking a high price now. That sucks. But yeah, I'm actually not like, it's not, it would not be fair that I like take a gun and go rob him, and go take all his supplies, because and then say like, yeah, but you shouldn't have done that, like that's not fair. Here, you're gonna give it all to me. We understand that's a robbery, huh? In plain daylight. You don't do that. It's criminal. Yet most people will have no moral issues to ask the same from the government and not see it as a robbery. Huh? So, yeah, this causes a lot of misery. The belief in the state, that the state can initiate violence for in immoral situations, and that we can just wipe our hands free of any guilt. This happens all the time, and it's really a cause of lots of suffering. And it starts with the individual. Your individual thinking needs to change about this before you can see why that's wrong. Uh, but it's the same. So yeah, statism and it's the fiat system is a consequence of the statism. Why do people support the fiat system? Even people in the cryptocurrency world, often you hear them say, luckily there is a fiat system that allows them to print money and bail out companies and pay people, for example, the $1,000 that's now given or will be given to United States citizens, or $1,200 per person, or basic income proponents. Like, yeah, luckily, actually, it's thanks to the fiat system we can do these things, and actually that's a positive of the fiat system, they say. They have no clue. They don't understand it. Huh? They don't see the victims of this system. Huh? Like, even if you would get $1,200, as indeed Roger Ver in that interview says also very clearly, that's not value. The value comes from people that produce goods, offer services. They offer value, and money is just a system to pay for that value. And if you double the amount of money in circulation, you don't have more products and more services. It just doubles in price. And if the government gives you $1,000, you can be sure that this $9,000 gonna go to people in between. So you get 1,000, that means it's 9,000 that actually you lost. If you hold that currency, you lost a lot of money in that transaction. It's the same with the basic income. People that promote that. And then you say, yeah, but you have poor people, what do they have to do? Well, poverty is caused by the government in most cases, or stupidity of people. And so you need to work on that. Get rid of the government that causes a lot of poverty. At least get rid of the statistics system, the statism, where it's justified to initiate violence all the time against people, individuals and groups of people, to rob people all the time. You can't create wealth that way, very little. And if there is not much wealth, there's lots of poverty. It starts with morals, and it's not there. So crypto is a big step forward. It's not only that people can't, government can't steal from that. That's a big plus. But it also comes with the idea that decentralization is super important. You shouldn't be relying on the government because it's a very bad idea. They are not able to help you very well. They are actually not there to help you. They are the rulers, the people that stand above you, that steal from you. They don't produce anything. They don't produce any products or services. They only take from you. And then they give a little bit back to say like, hey, this is what we give. It's like a friend that takes half of your money and then he treats you for a beer. That's a bad deal. Huh? Don't take the beer, huh? Even if it's free, because it's a bad deal. He stole half your money. Huh? So, yeah, us as individuals, what can we do? Well, we can participate not in the statism system, but in the decentralized system, where, for example, if you need schooling for your kids, don't go to a government school. It sucks. It's bad for your child. Huh? Look for private schools. Huh? Yes, they cost much more than a government school. Yes, but they're also much better. Huh? Or do homeschooling, or get together with other people that understand that a government school is not good for you, for your child. Yeah, you're rid of your children, but they come back with all kind of with a worldview that's not going to help them. They may have been violated, they may have been beaten, or bullied. Yes, social contact is super important for children, but you don't have to go to a government school to get that. You can organize that in a decentralized way much better. Huh? And it applies to all fields that are invaded by governments and monopolized by governments suck. Huh? Like the hospitals. Yes, you have some free enterprise hospitals in it, but there's so many regulations in it that they, for the most part, suck. It's not actually a place to heal the sick. It's a place to die. Huh? A hospital in most places. Huh? Why is that? Huh? Because it's not really a free market. Huh? Too much government involvement. Huh? So even for basic things, like education or medical, you really have to start looking for private solutions. And yes, that will cost more, but it will be much better. Huh? And very, yeah, you just have to escape the whole statism thinking. And that's very difficult because the state takes so much from you that it's like, for most people, they have to take the free government schools. Huh? They have to take the free hospital because they don't have any money left to pay for a private school or for private education or to stay with their children. They don't have the money. Huh? Or to find private doctors that are really paid by them and work for them and will do the best to keep them alive because they lose their source of income. Hospitals don't lose their source of income if you die there. No. Huh? So, as investors, we can what you see that is over time more and more sectors get liberalized and free of the chains of government, and that's a slow process. But in every decade, you see that a certain sector gets more liberalized, and the involvement of the government goes back there, and slowly we are in that sense progressing towards a better world. And as investors, that's where you can make lots of money when an industry is finally freed from all the stiffening regulations and monopolizing practices and threats of violence, often backed by threats of violence, to go to jail if you would do anything as a free enterprise in that sector. Then you can see that there's lots of money to be made. And so today that's clearly in crypto. Huh? Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest change here, that suddenly private currencies are allowed. That's very new. And you got jailed for that only 10 years ago. And we have to really take full advantage of this because that's not a given. That can change. That can be turned back. Governments can change their policies. But as long as they don't, and as long as there are no legal risks to go to jail, it is really the right sector to participate in because it will be the most profitable, but also you do the most good for the world to participate in it. Huh? It creates the most wealth. Um, and it's super important. Like for example, I am a big fan of Tesla. It's super great. It's innovating in a sector that was also has lots of regulations. Cars. Why was it so expensive to buy a shitty car that goes down in value so much the moment you ride it out of the dealership? Is because lots of regulations, and Tesla is fighting that. Like Tesla refused to start a dealership network, and due to that, it has a lot of problems, a lot of resistance in different states in the US and in different countries in the world that really insist on the dealership model because, well, they can make more money off you without providing much value. But Tesla is doing a great job there in innovating a certain sector and really fighting the regulations, but also really because they don't sit on because in these industries what you see with lots of regulations that the industry stops innovating because they make money easily. They don't have to, and there are very few competitors that challenge them. So that was the case in the car industry. Yeah. And for example, you had this Indian before Tesla was there. There was an Indian company that created very cheap cars. What was the name? I don't remember. It's still very active today. And but he couldn't sell the cheap cars in Europe, for example, because of tons of regulations that this car is not safe because of this and that and that and that, and people don't have the freedom to buy that car. It's the government that judges what car you can buy. So yeah, Tesla is doing a great job there. But will Tesla change society the way crypto can? No. Yes, it would be cool. We all drive Teslas or other EVs. It's a big like improvement for our wealth. You're much richer if you can buy an EV than a gasoline car. It's a much better deal. It improves our wealth, but the government can still bring the economy to a standstill with a finger knip like this. The government can still print as much fiat money they want, and of course, for that you usually need to create a crisis to get really the full support of the population. You want to do a self-flag attack, for example, like 9/11. That helps a lot in getting full support from a population that yes, you can print as much as you want, you can pay it to your buddies as long as they are war companies to protect us against terrorists. It's fine, and it's not a problem. You lost trillions here and there. Just protect us against the terrorists. That's all we want. So the population is very, very quick to believe all these stories, and I believe we have something similar happening today here. It's clearly severely exaggerated. Like this virus, first of all, looks like it's likely a bioweapon. It's not coming from bots. So it's planted. It could be by accident by the Chinese that fucked up and let it go out of the lab, or it could be the CIA that planted it in China to hit them. But it's very interesting that this virus only kills old people for the most part. Yes, sometimes some young people die from it, but usually it's also because of other factors, like they worked in a hospital and they had a lot of the exposure to the virus, or they have other medical issues. It's a virus that's actually comes much in handy for the government. It kills mainly old people that are a cost to the governments, because the government promised them, you work hard and you give all your life, half your money to us. Okay, we understand you don't like that, but when you turn 60, we will pay everything for you. You don't have to work anymore. You have guaranteed pension. So it's a bit sinister, but it does suit them very well that all people die because it's only an expense and a problem for them. But also, like, it means that, and also, like, if you have lots of infrastructure, you can actually have a much higher chance to survive this virus. If you have access to ventilator, you're old, but you do have access to knowledge and technology, such as ventilators, then actually your chance for survival is much higher. So for the political class that's, yeah, a bit older, but not 80 yet, and that, I mean, to create a panic in the world, this comes in handy very much, huh? Especially also if it starts in China, which is the biggest threat to the biggest power in the world, which is still the US today. It all comes very much in handy, and not just for the US, for all governments. Comes even for the Chinese. It's actually the Chinese government, the CCP. This is not a bad thing for them. Huh? Like, they don't lose power due to a virus killing old people mainly in their country. No, they gain power due to it. Huh? They can, even if they fuck up totally with shutting down the economy and causing way too much harm, then still they look for the most Chinese. They look like the good guy because, well, I mean, the virus was stopped, the exponential growth was stopped. So even if they killed more people than was necessary, well, they still look like the good guy for 9 in 10 Chinese because they did draconian fascist shutdowns and thereby protected most people and see the virus stopped growing. So wow, again, a plus for the CCP. But it's true for every country, every government, and I think this is what's happening, sees the benefit quite quickly of such a crisis, the same as 9/11, where the US leads like, hey, we go fight the terrorists, and everybody that's not with us is against us. In the beginning, I think many governments are like, okay, what's happening here? But after a while, they figure out from, hey, actually, we also have some groups in our country that are a threat to our power. Those are terrorists. And let's do maybe a small false flag attack ourselves, throw some anthrax or some bomb somewhere and kill some civilians, and those are the terrorists, we need to attack them, and people immediately go with it because that's the trend of the day. Terrorists everywhere, so must be here too, huh? And voila, they can print also money and pay to their war companies and look like heroes for fighting a bad guy. So it's infectious. The evils of the state infect other states to copy it. I think this is what's going on here also with this virus. In the beginning, it's like, oh my God, what is this? Even the US government may be not leading this. Maybe it was the Chinese government that led this because Donald Trump in the beginning said it's a hoax and he wasn't jumping on the boat. Suddenly he shifts and suddenly he's like, also a big threat, and let's shut down also all flights and all that. So I think that's what's going on, that governments just copy each other, just like it happens very often. We are social creatures, we copy each other's strategies, and but governments do so too, and I think that's what's going on here, and well, yeah. So voila, that's my opinion on the whole matter. There are many other like astonishing lies that the government has told us that you can't believe that it ever happened. It did happen, like the moon landing. Everybody believed what was happening on TV. It was like, wow, the Americans in 1969 are landing on the moon. Can you believe that? That's just so impressive. Huh? But it was the biggest lie ever told. And in the beginning, when you hear that, you think, but you're crazy to think that didn't happen. It was like, still today, everybody believes that happens. That's what everybody believes, that's happened. But it's not. Dive into it. It's very unlikely that happened. And the simplest argument is, why are we not there today? If it happened then, 50 years ago, before the invention of the computer, like, why is it only happening today that we finally succeed in placing a rocket on its ass? Like Tesla succeeded and some other people. You fly the rocket up and then you land it on its ass. The US government did that 50 years ago, but private enterprise didn't succeed in that in the 90s. Many companies tried to get that done. You fly the rocket up and you land it back on its ass so that you don't lose the rocket, which they claim to have done 50 years ago on the moon. But we couldn't do it in the 90s, 40 years later or 30 years later. We can only do it today, and it's a genius like Elon Musk that succeeded in it, the only one. So, like, it makes no sense. That didn't happen. Huh? So it was all just Hollywood on TV, and it must have been that several governments knew it was total bullshit. Huh? Yet they go with it too. Huh? Even the Russians went with it. They sell this to their own population as true. Why? Because they lost power due to that. Why did the US government do that? They did it, well, statism, to impress the people, to show that they are the boss, to show that they rule, to show that they are mighty, huh? To show that, yes, it's like, it's just an impression of power and might. Huh? But why did the enemies, like it was a Cold War between America and Russia? Why did the Russia not say, that's bullshit, they're fooling you guys, didn't happen? Because they do the same with their own population. Huh? They do the same. Huh? They are in the business of ruling. And that part of that is impress the populace with lies. Things that you claimed you have done, but you never did. Huh? But it does impress them a lot. So governments, you think they are competing with each other, but yeah, it's the same as the aristocracy at the time, when there were kings ruling the world. They are not in the main business of competing with each other and fighting each other and gaining territory. That's not the main business. The main business is squeezing out their own populace for taxes. That's their main business. And they are doing the same business, and they help each other often to look good, to look powerful. So that's why the moon landing happened. And that's a total shock to me to discover all that. And that means, yeah, we still live in a in a very hierarchical world, where, yeah, we are, it's not much different than at the time when there were kings everywhere, and local rulers with their own castle, and yeah, you serve them. You're there to serve them, and you speak up. Your life is at risk. It's still like that today. Okay, it has much improved. Like, we can speak up, for example, in the West. I love that. I love that I'm able to make this kind of podcast, and I'm not going to jail for it. I'm not even being approached by government agents who threaten me to silence. I love that we have much more freedom of speech today. That's great. I love that. We have improved a lot. I'm happy I'm not living in China, because you do this in China, the government will approach you and say, and shut you up. And if you don't shut up, your life is at risk. So I think the West on that regard is much ahead than China. But we still have a very long way to go. And it's in our own hands what we decide to do with our own money that creates the future. With our own time, that's what creates the future. What we decide to participate in, what we decide to do and spend our money on and invest in, that is what will create the future. So from that perspective, crypto is a fantastic investment. But not only the price is super cheap, like 100 or 200 billion total market cap for all cryptos. They print that in a day. That's nothing. But it's really like, it's not just a price. It is really challenging the current political system. Unlike so many other great investments, like Tesla does not challenge the political system, but crypto does. And it's the decentralization aspect that does it. Because in crypto you often have also projects that are very centralized, very top down, totally dependent on the leader to succeed or fail, and that's likely not to succeed. The value is in the decentralization, and that's why I decided to invest big in Bitcoin Cash again, because I noticed, like, wow, they really fucked up in Bitcoin Cash, the leadership, like Amaury Suchet, and then even Jian Wu and Roger Ver shortly supported the idea, but many others that have a leadership position in Bitcoin Cash supported the terrible idea to start taxing Bitcoin Cash holders. I could not have imagined they could have like ever supported or thought of something like this. It was really terrible. But what you saw was that the community spoke up very loudly, and it would just fail. Like, yes, they can do that, but it would be a fork into another Bitcoin Cash, and like 60-70% of the Bitcoin Cash community would likely switch to the other project, and so the value would also switch to there, and so they can't pull it off, huh? And that shows that it's really decentralized. Like, the values are shared by the by the community, the values of sound money, of not allowing people to leech from them and to profit from them, but to keep the value of their own production for themselves, is a value shared widely by Bitcoin Cash investors. And that's why it's not able to be hijacked. It's not because of the tech or the proof of work system, the tech is a result of the values, and the tech will yeah. So that's why I invested big again in Bitcoin Cash, because I could see like, wow, the community really has the right values, and that will that will create value. Sound money. That's what cryptocurrency is. That's the value of cryptocurrency. It's sound money, because that's really lacking in the world. That's the first value. There are many other interesting things you can do with cryptocurrency, but it starts with that. Because let's say like, oh no, you have smart contracts. That's the value. Yeah, but what if the currency is inflated into infinity, and developers or marketeers steal, or even maybe some government steals value from that smart contract currency? What's the value then? It's nothing. There is no value then. Even if you have very good smart contracts, very user friendly, with real adoption cases, oh, that's all cool. But if the currency itself is being leached from, well, there is no value being created for you as a coin holder, because it's all stolen away. So it starts with, you need really a sound money that's really understood by the investors of that currency, that it needs to stay sound money, and only then you can build value on top of it. So voila, a rant of 40 minutes is a new record. Now I'm gonna take a look at all the comments, and thank you all for joining the live show. So John Morris says that his boss called that he can come back to work voluntarily, but he says he's still waiting because he has a social safety net here. Well, my response to that is, that's not... Actually, I also, when I started working, I was supposed to start working, but I didn't want to do that. I actually, what I did was I got unemployment benefits from the government, because I wanted to just read books and I didn't want to go to work. And well, if you have a beautiful story in Europe, you just get unemployment benefits. So I did that, and I worked a little bit sometimes, but half my income was from unemployment benefits, and half my income was from doing small jobs that from time to time. And I did that for a couple of years, and I had a good time reading a lot of books, but it also ate at my self-confidence. I didn't feel I didn't feel proud of myself, and it was very hard to stop that, to stop getting that money from the government. It was very hard to stop that. It took me, I don't know, 5 years or so. But when I did it, I felt much better, and my growth accelerated a lot by stopping to do that. And so yeah, I think government money also always comes at a price. Yes, you get free money, but it comes at a price for your growth and self-confidence, and even time. Sometimes you have to put lots of time to get that government money, and I understand, like, the reason why I did it was that I hated also the system. I said, fuck them, yeah. I didn't get any proper schooling. and it's only now, like I was past 21, I was 21 or 22, and I tried different kind of educations, and it just didn't work for me. Architecture, filmmaking, and I stopped with all of them because I just hated the school system, the autocratic system. Also programming I tried, and I stopped with all of it, and then I just started self-studying. But I said, look, I want also money from the government because, well, I still need to educate myself. I was held busy for well, since 21, they kept me busy with all kind of bullshit, and I have no qualities whatsoever. I can't offer anything of value. I don't know anything. I can't do any craft. So yeah, I'm gonna take that government money to educate myself on my own. Huh? That was my reasoning, and yeah, okay, I did it for a while, but it all depends on your. There is so much more at play when you take certain decisions that are hard to explain to other people. But yeah, um, good for your boss that he starts to work again, and I hope that he succeeds in getting his company back on track soon. And yeah, I hope you also get value from staying home, John. Yes, so I'm still investing in Tesla. My portfolio is currently, crypto went up a bit today, 65% crypto and then 35% Tesla and calls. Um, and I'm often tempted to invest more in crypto actually, and sell some Tesla and sell some calls to get more crypto, get more Bitcoin Cash, because I really think that it's very, very likely that we've seen also the fiat low here, for cryptos. Like we didn't break the bottom, but we made a higher low that came close to the bottom. So for Bitcoin Cash, we went to $150 or 160, and I don't think we will see that price again. I think that was the last time. But if you can still buy today at 220, I think even that is a tremendous good price. And Ethereum 140 today, these prices are really good. And if you look at the Trololo chart, Trololo trend line, it's very likely we will continue to actually grow slow, parallel to the trend line over the next year, even 2 years. But that does mean higher fiat prices. Huh? It's likely we will go to a higher undervaluation, and we will stay around 60% undervalued compared to the trend line, but the trend line always goes up. Huh? So I think the fiat prices of today are still very, very attractive, and I think that it will be much more profitable to be invested in crypto than in, for example, Tesla. Uh, 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 and of course, with crypto, you improve the world a lot more. So I'm very tempted, but I stick. I have to force myself to stick to my investment plan, and my investment plan is that it's a good plan. I put lots of thought into it, and it makes a lot of sense. I went up to actually from 0% to 65% crypto on this crash, uh, um, but that was actually an exception. The plan is to actually build up crypto exposure the lower we go, and I just made an exception for that for the coronavirus hysteria that was heading our way. But I picked up the plan again the moment the markets crashed, and now the plan is just that, yeah, 64% that was the right allocation there at the prices I could buy. But if we do a double test of the bottom and we go again to 4,000 for Bitcoin Core, and again to 160 for Bitcoin Cash, and again to 100 for Ethereum, I will go to an exposure. The plan is then to go to 70%. And by that time, my current exposure of 65% will probably have dropped to maybe 50% or 40%. I will then go to 70% if that would happen. And if we break the bottom, which is possible, but I don't think likely, it's only 30% chance, I think, 33. But if that happens, and we go to 2,000 Bitcoin Core, and to make new lows or test the lows of Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum, I will go to 80% exposure, and that will be my last buy. but I don't think that's likely at all that we will reach that. I think that's unlikely. And yeah, it's very clear that what just happened a week ago, 2 weeks ago, in the crypto market, is very likely the bottom of. We just set a higher low, very likely. Sorry, a higher high, a higher low, yeah, because the volume was tremendous. Huh? It was higher. It was the highest volume since the bull market peak end of 2017. We had the same volume for the first time now, and so that means that it's very likely a trend reversal that we saw happening there when we hit 3,800 and a week 2 weeks ago, and very likely will go up from here, but slowly. Let me take a look at the questions and the comments. Yeah, I think these unemployment numbers are of course very bad, but since it's really an artificial shutdown of the economy, it's a statism move to force, like, it's a combination of creating tremendous fear for this virus, whereas if you use your mind, you can see, like, yeah, but actually the chance for me to die from this, even if I catch it, is very low. But yeah, you have that panic, and that fear is caused by a lot of images that you see even on social media, Twitter and YouTube, like people dying in the streets in China, or body bags lined up, and that scares people, or stories, and if there's one child dies from it and the whole world knows about it, or one doctor that's 40 years old dies about it and the whole world knows about it. But these are exceptions to the rule. You have to look at the data, and then you look at the data. It's like actually average age of people dying is 75 or 80, for example, in Italy. Like, it's the same age than they normally die. Like, what the hell is going on here? Why such a panic? Why is everybody everywhere talking about this? Even on social media, on Twitter, or on YouTube, everywhere is about COVID-19, as if there is no other things happening in the world anymore. Like, this is orchestrated. The media decided to do that, and you can't escape it, and it's infectious. The panic is much more infectious than the virus, and this panic that does a lot of damage in combination with the forced just the decisions government take to forcefully shut down economic activity, and that cause, of course, a lot of unemployment. But I think it's likely they will recover very quickly, because it's forced. Like, a business that has to shut down by the government, well, it will do so. It has no other option. Tesla was forced to shut down its two big gigafactories in the United States and can't produce anything anymore. Yeah, of course, these people have no work. Some companies then force them to go into unemployment benefits. Yes, that explodes the amount of unemployees, but these companies are not broken. The moment these forced shutdowns stop, they start working again. And so the unemployment that is like skyrocketing now will drop dramatically the moment the economy starts again. And of course, there are also companies going broke for real, but those are the weakest companies. Only the weakest companies go broke for real. The weakest individuals with the poorest financial situation, yeah, they go broke. Yes, they have serious permanent damage. But it's only the weakest ones. And so yeah, I think that that's why you have to look at these numbers. They are different than in a real financial recession, where you have an end of a cycle, of an expansionary cycle, and you start with a contraction that will take a long time, and the trend changes from, yeah, credit expansion to credit contraction, like these kind of cycles, they are really much more like the unemployment caused by that is much more founded and will stay much longer, because these companies, you have many companies that are actually in a very weak condition and can't survive when that becomes more expensive, for example. But that's not what's happening today. Debt is not becoming more expensive, for example. So yeah, I think unemployment numbers will very quickly go down a lot again also once this flies over. And I think it will fly over quickly. I still think that's the case. You can see that also. Um, like for example, exponential growth of infected people in Europe and United States has really started to slow down already. A week ago I said in 2 weeks you will clearly see it slow down, but it's already today. You see it clearly slow down. So yeah, it's a quick process. It came very quick, this crisis, but it likely will also very quickly fly over. Yeah, as you see with yourself also, like the panic, like first you ignore it, then suddenly it strikes you and you're very panicked, but then like after a couple of weeks you start to look at the other things and it starts to go away, fade away. So I think the same effect we will see just towards the economy. And so I don't agree with all these people that really think this is the start of a recession or a depression, or this will collapse the state, or the fiat system, or cause inflation or hyperinflation. I think that's all really going to prove not to be true. And I put a lot of money on that actually. 10 to 15% of my portfolio is invested in calls that only make money if the economy recovers quickly, the next 6 months, and that we actually reach all-time high prices already in 6 months. That's what I'm betting on with a piece of my portfolio. So someone Moha is asking, what's the best project other than Bitcoin Cash that aim to be digital peer-to-peer cash, so that you have a backup plan for Bitcoin Cash? Good question, but I haven't studied the market. I think there's Digibyte. What else? Well, I'm not a fan anymore of Dash and Zcash, who are also peer-to-peer digital cash, but I'm not a fan anymore of them. So there is also, of course, the smaller projects like Nano and Obyte that use different kind of technology to have peer-to-peer cash. But yeah, I think for me, like, it's not worth it to invest the time in it or the money right now. But it will be, but only 1 year or 2 years from here. I said that 1 year ago also, but still saying that today, because well, Ethereum, I have also Ethereum, though I'm always considering to sell more Ethereum for Bitcoin Cash, but I still have like 40% Bitcoin Cash, 20% Ethereum. So I have a big investment in Ethereum. It's my intellectual investment, not investment from my heart, but from my mind. Um, and I think that's my backup plan. It's not, Ethereum is not peer-to-peer electronic cash, but the risk reward is very good, is the best in Ethereum, because it has real adoption. It has really a lot more adoption of Bitcoin Cash, for example, in all projects. Like Ethereum is the clear winner when it comes to adoption, which is of course something I totally did not expect when Ethereum came onto the market, because they were only selling stories. But today they're not selling stories, they're selling adoption. And that's really valuable. That lowers the risk a lot. So I think that's my backup plan. It's possible, yeah, with all the network effect going on in a currency, that if Ethereum succeeds in becoming the biggest crypto, that even though they, for example, don't target peer-to-peer to be peer-to-peer cash, they might actually become it just by being the biggest one, huh? And they might be like, their adoption might be driven most by, for example, smart contracts used on that platform. But because it's so big, people also use it for peer-to-peer payments, huh? Because you have the most user-friendly wallets for it, because it's, yeah, so that's can happen with network effects. So that's why I use that as a backup plan. Looking at the comments, Tata Cars, indeed, that was the Indian company that produces cars very cheaply, but can't export them to most regions because of regulations. Looking at the comments about the moon landing. But yeah, the it's starting here in Kenya also. So they did a curfew after 7. People can't come in the street. It's so interesting what happens. So you have these politicians on TV saying, yeah, about coronavirus and COVID, oh, and it's going up. The amount of people are infected, and it's very bad and dangerous. And and we have to take measures, and we have to do a curfew and to stop the spreading of the virus. But what happens then? The military comes out of their holes and they start beating up people in the street before 7 at 5 and at 6. And then I'm like, what? Why is this happening? Ah, yeah, it's a long time ago that there were riots, so they are happy they can finally go back on the streets and show they are the boss now. Uh, Attacking people with dogs and beating women that are just like shopping before 7. So yeah, the government is a bunch of bandits, huh? And what's so strange, and I also fell for that all too often, is that the top dog, the prime minister or the president, that you do believe that's a good guy, huh? But then his forces of police and military, yeah, that's maybe not so good, huh? Or the teachers or the administration or the bureaucracy, that's not so good. But the top dog, that's a good guy, huh? But he's the boss. He actually is in control, huh? So it's a strange process. I think it's yeah, I don't know it's why that is, but what happens also a lot is that, for example, in psychology, like if you haven't overcome trauma, you always look for the same. So if you're, for example, raised by an abusive mother, because it's always about abusive fathers, but let's talk about abusive mothers. A mother who, for example, dominates the child, and uh, what's gonna happen? Let's say it's a boy. Um, well, the boy will very likely look for a girlfriend that dominates him too. After his mother is out of the picture, he'll want the same. abuse. Huh? And it's only if he ever does internal work and asks himself, why do I always end up with girlfriends that dominate me, and goes back to his childhood to understand actually why he is the way he is because actually he became a boy that's really good at dealing with dominant women because his mother was like that, and he knows how to live with such a person, and that's his ideal. Instead of, as a child, instead of realizing like, damn, my mother is fucked up and I should get away here as soon as possible, a child can't do that. What the child does is he idealizes his mother, even if she's totally fucked up and abuses him. And he looks at his mother as good, even though she's bad. And so that's his definition of good. And so later he will end up with a dominant girlfriend because that's his definition of good. He thinks that's how women are supposed to be, and that's how he will is good. That is what makes him happy. So it's very difficult to get out of that, and maybe the same is going on for us populace with leaders, because we're all born into a system like this where we think, wow, the guy on TV that's the top dog, he's the good guy. Actually, I also when I was younger, wanted to become a politician and a minister and a prime minister. Like when you're a boy, you want to become police or military, because it's projected as the good. But with looking at the history, you can really learn a lot. For example, with investing, people think like, oh, they are printing trillions again, so it's gonna create inflation and hyperinflation. But this already happened in the past so many times that they suddenly printed a lot. And what do they do later? Then they stop printing and they even take money out of circulation. But on average, they always end up printing about 8%. Even if they suddenly in a couple of years double the amount of money in circulation, then because of the years later, they don't increase it. So it's not like 100% in a year, it's like 0%. And sometimes it's minus 2% for 4 years in a row. And so after 4 years, they actually are not, they did minus 10% in total. So that gives an average of about 8% per year. And that's the case. So that cannot cause hyperinflation. You really need to print a lot more than that to cause hyperinflation. They don't do that. They are smart thieves. They don't rob you blind in one day. No, they take every day a little bit. That's how you make tons of money. They understand that concept. In the West better than in the South, in Latin America or Africa. That concept is not fully understood by some politicians, and so they try to steal a lot more in a short time frame, and then of course, yeah, you lose your sheeple because they starve to death or they run out of the country out of misery. You shouldn't steal like that. So they understand that in the West very well. They shouldn't steal too much in a short time frame. Slowly, 8% per year is actually quite a lot. You steal that, it's a lot of money from the fiat system, but it only causes 5% inflation, 5 to 6%, and then you lie about this number, you cut it in half or by 3, you say it's only 2% inflation. Guys, look, we did the calculation of the products. We're not gonna show you the products that we calculated on. We don't give you any information of the price data history, but we did study it and we continue to study it, and it's only 2%. Well, I studied it myself. I have the videos there. Just go to my YouTube channel. Real inflation, do in the search bar or in Google. Real inflation, Mark de Mezel. And I have the videos for you with the price data. Clearly shows that there is 5% inflation on products, services. So you steal 8% per year. It causes about 5 to 6% inflation. You lie about, you say it's 2%, and the sheeple is okay with that. And that's what's going on here. It stays like that. It's not that they today stole more. The way they steal is just that it's not every year they print 8%. No, they need a good story to steal a lot, and then after, well, they steal less for a while. That's what really drives this virus crisis. Is, I think, they need panic in order to steal. So they need a good story why they should be printing lots of money and get no resistance for it, not lose their re-election. For that you need to have a crisis, and then you can print a lot, steal a lot, and with the full support of the people, and get re-elected for it. That's the trick. That's what you need to do. Interactive Brokers is a great stockbroker. Taking a look at the comments. Thanks all for being here. Jack Rickards posted a new video. I really like his work. Yes, I am not saying that this virus, like Jack Rickards, actually I get a lot of my info from him. I don't think it's a hoax, that it's not real. I really believe it's real, the virus, the coronavirus. It really does cause, with a small amount of people, serious respiratory problems in the lungs, but especially older people, for the most part. And so, yeah, it's very wise to protect, for old people to protect themselves from this. Yeah. But I get all that information from Jack Rickards. It is very infectious, the virus, sadly. And so, yeah, wearing masks is very important if you don't want to catch it. And N95 masks, not the surgical masks. But the surgical masks, the cheap ones, are good for someone who's sick and who's coughing. Of course, that stops a lot of the spread. But if you don't want to catch it, you're not gonna be safe with a surgical mask. A little bit, but not enough, because, as Jack Rickard says, like he says, it stays in the air for about an hour. People breathe it in and out if they have it. Even without coughing, they breathe it out and it stays in the air. So if you go into a room where someone else was that had it, within the hour, you might catch it, even if there's nobody in the room. So it takes some time for these droplets to fall to the ground, because in a cough, most droplets are heavy and they fall to the ground quickly. But you have some fine particles also that stay in the air for a while. And yeah, the virus dies, but like half of the viruses die in an hour, another half in another hour, another half in another hour. So it goes down, but yeah, some survive. But yeah, this is all very scary. Like, yes, it's true. You can't, and especially with children that are in contact with other people, yeah, you can catch it quickly. And so, but the very good news is that it's very rare for middle-aged and young people to die from this, and so that's why it's really severely exaggerated. That's why it's not everybody should lock them up. No, only old people should lock them up. Or be careful, or social distance, or not see their grandchildren for a while. Like, be smart as an old person, because it can make the difference of living another 5 years, or maybe another 10 years, or dying now. But that's not a reason to shut down the economy. Yeah, and when it comes to the stock market, I think we saw the bottom a week ago. We did a small bounce. The market seems doubtful now, So of course, a game of odds here. How much probabilities do you give it? But I think we saw the peak of panic a week ago. It was very interesting. So how that all happens a week ago on the Monday or Tuesday, when we saw the actual bottom, was the same day that all investment banks, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, said that wow, this is much worse and than we thought, and we are now in a recession and we'll likely see a depression. That was all the articles on that Monday, and that was the same day also after the weekend that they found the solution of a 2 trillion bailout that was also announced. And yes, we have the solution here. So they create lots of panic. We go into a recession, depression. At the same time, the government is there with a solution to bail out everybody, and that same day likely we saw the bottom of the market. So that's how they do it. That's how it goes. Create maximum panic, and put out the reports that are totally the inverse of what you believe. I think these investment banks are buying. We're buying when they announce that a big depression is coming, and not selling. So I think this is what just happened. We'll have to see. I mean, it can go deeper. It can indeed like last more months, and we see a new bottom that goes lower. That's all true. But as a value investor, yeah, I think that's as good as it gets. Like the chance, I mean, with such wide panic, such strong sell-offs, stocks and crypto, such great valuations. Yeah, that's the time to be invested fully. Yeah, you want to buy low, sell high. Very easy to say. Buy low, sell high. It's very easy to say, but very hard to execute. But yeah, you have to remain objective. It's difficult, but you get great rewards if you do. But if it goes deeper, I decided not to take margin loans to keep my risk low. I just wait it out. I lose money in valuation, yes, but it's only a matter of time before we go back into a normal economy where my investments will recover a lot and continue to conquer the world. My battery will die. Oh no, not yet. No. Looking if I can see comments. I'm through them. Yeah, so Jack Rickards, I admire him, and many other people I admire, but I don't follow exactly what they. Not everything, just parts of it. Jack Rickards is only invested 1/3, so 2/3 is still cash, and he thinks this is a dead cat bounce, and normally he says he would sell actually on a bounce like this, but he says he's not gonna do it because they printed so much money. Anything can happen here because there's so much money in circulation now that it could go up. So, but the most important thing is, of course, that he did only invested 1/3 of his portfolio and is still 2/3 cash. And I decide to go 100% invested and have zero cash. It's a big difference. But yeah, it's my opinion that if it's not the bottom, it's close to it. I think it's not likely to go much deeper, and so I think we differ in opinion there. But also, he said that he actually prefers to buy on the way up, and that's a preference, and I really don't have that. I hate buying on the way up, and I hate selling on the way down. So I really try to buy as prices go lower, and I try to sell as prices go higher. So that's a difference also in strategy. It might be that he still decides to buy around current valuations or on the way up at higher valuations. He might still go 100% invested. It's a different approach. But the most important difference I have with Mark Faber, who is a hero of mine. I learned a lot from him from investing. But yeah, he's really very, very. He thinks it will get much worse. And valuations have a good chance to go a lot lower. Huh? But yeah, I really don't agree with it. So I don't invest accordingly. Huh? Well, that was it. I was through the comments. Thanks all for joining the show, for watching, and let's hope things improve soon. But most importantly, I really hope you guys invest in crypto and a lot more than 5% or 10% of your portfolio. I mean, if you want it safe, you can just buy Ethereum. There's clear adoption there. But if you value sound money, you should really look at Bitcoin Cash. It has proven to be very sound money. Nobody is inflating the supply or taking for it. There's a defined increase in supply that has been stick to it. And it's sound in the sense that you can actually send it to people very easily, very extremely cheap and much cheaper than Bitcoin Core and Ethereum. And it's a little bit it's not there yet. Like there is still it's still lagged by Amaury Séchet and Bitcoin ABC. If you look at the amount of people that run this client compared to the new client BCH N is a new client from the people that really don't agree with Bitcoin ABC. But it's very unlikely now that they will be successful in implementing that tax on the 15th of May. And so it is very likely that Bitcoin Cash will stay as is. And that's a very valuable project. I think the difference here with Ethereum is that Ethereum will never be Bitcoin. And people don't actually know crypto. They don't know Ethereum. They don't know cryptocurrency, but they do know Bitcoin. The world population knows Bitcoin, but they don't know Ethereum. And so it might be, as Bitcoin Core is fucking up so badly, it might be that Bitcoin Cash becomes the biggest currency in the future, bigger than Ethereum, because it's Bitcoin. You have other competitors also. Bitcoin SV is actually doing very well in valuation, I have to say. But I'm trying to estimate modestly the upwards potential of currencies. But even if Bitcoin Cash just keeps its market share, it would go up to $10,000 a coin if it keeps its market share. But actually, I think Bitcoin Cash, like Ethereum, has a very good, but Bitcoin Cash even more has a very good chance to really go up a lot in market share, because right now it's very low. It's only 2%. Let's say it recovers back to 8% at the peak of the top in 3 years, then it will go to about $10,000 a coin. But it actually has a chance to go up a lot higher. It could actually go to 20% market share or 30% market share. There could be a flippening between Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash, because the early Bitcoin investors are not in Bitcoin Core anymore. They are either gone or in Bitcoin Cash. It's very important. So, yeah. It's really I think it may really impress people, and you know how it goes. The price leads, but the price, if Bitcoin Cash suddenly goes up a lot, people will start talking about, hey, maybe that's gonna flip Bitcoin Core, and when it does, like, it will be an avalanche. So yeah, huge upwards potential, I believe. Bye bye all.